is if we do get one of these super El Niños, if this forecast does verify, there is an anticipation that the next few years will probably be record-breaking in terms of our global mean temperatures because of this kind of extra heat energy that comes out of the ocean and then goes into the atmosphere. Colin Zarzycki. I am an associate professor in the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science at Penn State University. So super El Niños, it's an interesting term because it doesn't have a formal definition. But really the way that we can think of a super El Niño is essentially one of these El Niño events, which are really a warming of ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. And the super idea is just telling us it's like a really turbocharged version of what we historically see. We kind of see El Niño and La Niña, which are the two big things floating back and forth as we go. And really what the super El Niño is just saying is like, hey, this is like a big one compared to what we've seen in the past. El Niño is one phase of something that is known as ENSO, which is the El Niño Southern Oscillation. And what ENSO is this kind of back and forth behavior of ocean temperatures in the Pacific Ocean. They kind of wobble back and forth on really like a multi-year time scale. And what they're really important for is because they're these large changes in what the ocean temperature is, whether it's super warm, I wouldn't say super cool, a little cooler, and where that warm water is actually plays a key role in governing what the circulation of the atmosphere looks like. What these maps represent are just a kind of distribution of what different models predict as far as ENSO evolution. And the simplest thing to note here is as these lines go up, you get a stronger El Niño event. And what these models are predicting, this is from the most recent forecast in the middle of March, is that you get this continual increase. Remember, the higher you get, the more strong your El Niño is. And all these different red lines represent a different realization of the model. The thing you'll note is that they're all kind of going in the same direction. You have a couple of them that are a little lower, a couple of them that are a little higher, but really there's fairly high confidence that we're going to get this growth of this El Niño event over the next 6 months, or at least that's what our models are telling us. And anything that's really above 2, which is a measure of how warm those ocean temperatures are, kind of falls into this general, super El Niño bucket. We don't really have a formal definition, but I can tell you that seeing temperatures 2 and 3 degrees above average in the Pacific Ocean is fairly rare and rather unprecedented, at least over the last 30 or 40 years. El Niño and La Niña, because they're such large-scale phenomena in the tropical atmosphere, they actually play a fairly important role in setting the baseline statistics of weather. So I want to be very careful. It's not like El Niño or La Niña specifically tell you something is going to happen, whether you're going to get a thunderstorm here, a snowstorm there, a drought here. But really, a better way of thinking of El Niño and La Niña is they're kind of like loading the dice. If you're playing a game and you're like, well, snake eyes doesn't really come up that often, but you put some little weights in the dice and suddenly snake eyes is coming up more often. That's effectively what El Niño and La Niña, are doing. Like you can still get a 4, you can still get a 7, but it's more likely than usual that you might end up with snake eyes. What El Niño and La Niña do is they impact how much wind shear is over the North Atlantic Ocean. Hurricanes don't like wind shear. So in strong El Niño years, we actually generally see suppressed hurricane activity. We have a lot of this wind shear. As they start to grow, it kind of rips them apart. Now that said, that may be a good thing for coastal interests in the United States, reduced hurricane risk activity. The one thing to note there is that, again, it's really very much a loading the dice situation. So that doesn't actually mean that we're not going to have hurricanes. It just means statistically the odds of us having them are less frequent. So one thing that we generally do see with these El Niño years is because El Niño is kind of manifested at this really warm ocean temperature, that kind of warm ocean puts heat into the atmosphere. In years where we have these large El Niños, if we were to look at the surface temperature across the globe as a whole, so we're taking this large average, we tend to see a lot of record-breaking heat. So years where you might hear in the news, NOAA has said this is the warmest year on record, overwhelmingly those tend to be El Niño years. So if this forecast does actually come to fruition, I would expect to see a lot of records broken over the next couple of years in terms of the Earth's surface temperature.